John, a 72-year-old Korean War veteran, had joined the military in his youth out of deep love for his country and a sense of duty. During the war, his bravery earned him the title of a hero among his unit. But when the war ended, John's life was turned upside down. Returning home, he faced profound loss. His wife passed away due to illness, and his son, unable to comprehend the trauma John carried from the war, distanced himself. This solitude carved deep wounds in John's life, leaving him isolated and broken. One day, while wandering the streets, John came across a stray dog. The animal was frail and abandoned, just like him. He named the dog Max, and from that day forward, Max became his closest companion. Max kept John company on lonely nights and gave him a reason to keep going. But life on the streets grew more difficult with each passing day. John and Max lived on the margins of society, seeking refuge in park corners and abandoned buildings. Their days were spent trying to avoid being noticed while scavenging for food. Yet no matter how little John had, he always shared it with Max. "I can't bear to see you go hungry, my friend," he would say, breaking his bread in half to share with his loyal companion. One day, a group of young men noticed John and began mocking him. "Hey, old man, are you and your dog dumpster diving for dinner?" they jeered. John tried to ignore them, but one of the boys threw a stone at Max. "Take your mutt and get out of here," another shouted. John stepped in front of Max, shielding him with his hands. In a trembling voice, he quietly pleaded, "Please, just leave us alone." But the mockery persisted. That night, as they huddled together under the stars, John whispered to Max, "This world doesn't belong to us, my friend." One cold morning, John and Max sat at the corner of a park. The sun was just beginning to rise, but the biting chill seeped into John's bones. As he gently stroked Max's thin coat, he muttered under his breath, "We'll get through this, buddy." Somehow. But deep down, even he was starting to doubt his own words. At that moment, a sleek black limousine slowed to a stop in front of the park. Inside, Donald Trump was returning from a business meeting. Glancing out of the window, his attention was caught by the sight of John and Max sitting huddled together. John's weary face, his faded military uniform, and Max's frail body struck a chord deep within him. "Stop the car," he instructed his driver firmly. He stepped out of the car and strode purposefully toward John, parting the small crowd gathered nearby. Unaware of Trump's approach, John sat lost in thought. When Trump finally stood before him and leaned in gently, John lifted his head. With a kind yet concerned tone, Trump asked, "Sir, are you all right? How can I help you?" John hesitated, his eyes heavy with fatigue and sorrow. He finally looked at Trump and replied, his voice barely above a whisper, "Just trying to survive." Trump's eyes caught the details of John's worn but once proud military uniform. His gaze lingered on the faded Korean War medals pinned to the fabric. "You're a veteran, aren't you?" Trump asked softly. Taking a deep breath, John lowered his gaze and began to speak. "Yes, I served in the Korean War. I once risked my life for this country. But everything changed after those days." Trump, sensing the weight of John's words, asked with compassion, "Would you tell me your story?" John nodded hesitantly, as though unburdening his heart for the first time in years. "I was young, so young when I volunteered to serve. The men I fought beside, they were like brothers to me. We shared everything. But war changes a person." His voice trembled as he continued. "One night, we were ambushed. My closest friend, Robert, was by my side. He had saved my life more times than I could count. We laughed together, cried together. But that night, there was an explosion. Everything was chaos, dust, and fire. I lost him right in front of me. I tried to save him, but I couldn't. That moment has haunted me every night since. I still see it in my dreams." Trump's expression tightened with emotion. He glanced at John's trembling hands and gently said, "That must have been incredibly difficult." John took another deep breath, his voice breaking. "When the war ended and I came home, nothing was the same. My wife left me, saying she couldn't live with a man who had never truly returned from the war. My son, even my own son, couldn't understand. He drifted away, and eventually, I was completely alone. I ended up here, On the streets, John's hand instinctively went to Max, stroking his loyal companion's head. Then I found Max, or maybe he found me. He was abandoned, just like me. We saved each other, I think. But life out here, it wears you down. Little by little, it takes everything from you. Trump listened intently, visibly moved by the depth of John's pain. You shouldn't have to live like this, Trump said firmly. You're a hero, John. This country owes you more than this. I won't leave you and Max like this. I'm going to help you. I promise. John looked up at Trump, his eyes filled with a mix of gratitude and disbelief. For the first time in years, there was a flicker of hope. Mr. President, my story is just one of many, but it's the first time I felt like someone actually hears me. Thank you, he said, his voice choked with emotion. Trump turned to his advisors, his voice resolute. We need to act immediately. Find this man a place to live. Get him the support he deserves. Make sure Max is cared for too. Do whatever it takes. For John, that moment was life-changing. For the first time in decades, he felt seen, valued, and important. As he sat there with Trump standing beside him, he realized this could be the beginning of a new chapter. Trump ensured that John and Max were settled in a comfortable hotel. He provided them with clean clothes and warm meals, ensuring they felt safe for the first time in years. The next day, Trump's team devised a plan to help John rebuild his life. They found him a role at a local animal shelter, believing his bond with Max made him the perfect candidate for the job. When John moved to the shelter, it became both a home and a purpose for him. Each day, he and Max arrived at the shelter early, caring for abandoned animals. John fed the dogs, cleaned their spaces, and worked tirelessly to help them find loving homes. For the first time in years, I feel like my life has meaning again, John said to Trump during a visit, his voice filled with gratitude. Trump smiled and replied, "You've always had meaning, John. Now everyone else can see it too." 1 year later, Trump organized a special ceremony to honor John. Held in the Rose Garden of the White House, the event brought together people from all walks of life. Trump stood at the podium, his voice steady as he spoke. John is one of this country's true heroes. Even after his service in war, he has continued to live with honor and give back. We owe him and all our veterans a debt we can never fully repay, but we can start by showing them the respect and support they deserve. The crowd erupted into applause as John was introduced. Max sat proudly in the front row, his tail wagging, as if he understood the significance of the moment. When John approached the microphone, the crowd fell silent. With tears in his eyes and Max by his side, John addressed the audience. Max reminded me that I wasn't alone. And Mr. Trump, he gave me a second chance at life. What matters most in this world is offering hope to someone who has none. That's what Max did for me. That's what President Trump did for me. And for that, I will always be grateful. The ceremony was covered nationwide, and John's story became a beacon of hope and inspiration. He was no longer just a war veteran, but a symbol of resilience and compassion for a nation. Max, his loyal companion, remained by his side as they embarked on this new chapter together, showing the world that even in the darkest moments, there is light to be found. If this story moved you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more inspiring stories like John's. Leave a comment below to honor the unsung heroes in your life, because sometimes even a small act of kindness can change a life forever.